All right, Maureen, I know. Get the kettle on then, I'll be there in a minute. I'm sorry about that, and I must apologise for my face. But Maureen has insisted on doing my makeup, and in my opinion she's made a right pig's ear of it. I feel ridiculous. But it's too late to worry now. Anyway, I'm sorry it's been so long since you heard from me, but I've had quite a lot of technical difficulties. Well, I dropped my webcam down the lavatory, but I shan't go into how and why that happened. Maureen's been dragging me all over the place in frenzied attempts to get me on a date. And last April, the village hall collapsed, right in the middle of Helen Shubbra's talk on the healing power of Feng Shui. Well, there were quite a lot of injuries. I got off lightly with just a broken big toe. I was wearing sandals and part of the ceiling fell onto my foot. But others were not so lucky. Maureen broke her collarbone. Our friend Mavis lost a very expensive pair of new glasses. And Helen, the speaker, who bore the brunt of the collapse, just as she was saying how buildings can sense who is in them, was dragged dazed and confused from the wreckage, muttering, "If you hadn't had hydrangeas in the entrance porch, this would never have happened." Poor thing. It was on the local news, of course. I was mortified to see a close-up of my smalls, which they had taken by zooming in on the stretcher as I was taken away from the scene. I cannot begin to explain the ribald remarks I had to endure over the ensuing weeks and months. I was even the answer to a pub quiz question. Who was wearing red knickers the night the village hall collapsed? Anyway, I digress. But oh, what a year we're having, aren't we? Apart from the village hall, we've had Brexit, a man with a dead bleached squirrel corpse on his head running for President of the United States, the escalation of hostilities all over the globe, and to cap it all, BHS has gone. I was very disappointed, and Maureen was inconsolable. "If I'd known it only cost £1, I'd have bought it," she kept sobbing, and no amount of explanation could bring her back to a rational state of mind. Luckily she had a date that evening, so I fetched a couple of cucumber slices and a face pack, and she was drinking gin and tonic through a straw until it was time to go out, which cheered her up a little bit. Oh yes, Maureen and I are still single, and I suppose you'll want to be hearing about our internet dating, but from my side there isn't very much to tell. Maureen has dated a string of unsuitable men and been out to lots of fancy places for dinner. She claims one of them even gave her a pearl necklace, but I haven't seen her wearing it. I'm afraid I'm a little more choosy. I learnt very early on that if a man offers to send you a photo of his sausage, it's very unwise to assume that he is a butcher. I did meet a chap who seemed quite nice at first. His name was Bernard, and we went out several times. The first time he took me for a meal at his golf club. I think I let him down a bit when somebody asked me what my handicap was, and I confessed to having to use tenor lady on long car journeys. Anyway, we soon got past that, and our next date was at an art gallery. I was a little unsettled when I saw how Bernard was lingering over the nudes in the sculpture gallery, and rather too obviously comparing their assets to mine. Against my better judgment, I said I would see him again, and he took me to the cinema to see a very pretentious film shot in black and white, apparently by someone with Parkinson's. I was feeling quite nauseous when suddenly I felt Bernard's hand on my thigh. I soon put a stop to that. I thrust my chalk ice into his crotch and legged it out of the cinema. I didn't expect to hear from him again, but to my horror he messaged me on the dating site saying he had had a wonderful evening and inviting me to a private showing at his place of 50 Shades of Grey. Well, I blocked him. Maureen said he sounded quite fun. I says, well, you're welcome to have him. I prefer to keep my thighs to myself, personally. Anyway, I'd best get on. I'm the secretary of the Bridland Victims Compensation Group. and I've got to draft a letter outlining how Mary Thorpe's false teeth got into the village hall chimney. It's a long story. And frankly, I don't want to go into it now, because it's quite distressing to remember it all. They only found them last week. The poor thing's been living off soup for the last 5 months. Anyway, I better go. So, take care. If I were you, I'd watch out for hydrangeas and chock houses. Bye-bye.